I'm Brandy Comer, and today I'm just going to be talking to you about my past couple of years in the MORE Method program. So quick overview, background of myself. I did get my bachelor's degree in math. I never focused on education or anything like that. I became aware later that I was enrolled in a couple of MORE Method courses, but I didn't actually know what that meant. After I graduated, I went on and taught high school for a few years, and again, never having any formal education training, never did student teaching or anything like that, and they basically just threw me in the room and shut and locked the door and ran and were like, good luck. So Dr. Mahavier and Dr. Kennedy actually from Lamar, I'm very blessed that they came and rescued me and influenced me to come back and work on my master's, which I just completed in May. And as a part of that, I was put into the MORE Method Apprenticeship program, which again, I would love to thank Dr. Mahavier, my mentor, my advisor, my math dad, for helping me through all of it, and Mr. Harry Lucas and the Legacy of R.L. Moore for all your support. So what was the MORE Method Apprenticeship program? It was a 2-year program. The first year I was assigned to a mentor who I sat and observed. It was Dr. Mahavier, his MORE Method courses, and the second year, the next 2 semesters, I was responsible for my own courses. So I'm kind of in a transitional stage right now. I just graduated from Lamar. I'm going to the University of North Texas in the fall to pursue my PhD, and as always, career in academics is on the table. So my actual experiences in the MORE Method program, as I said, my first year I observed Dr. Mahavier, and he does what I call, and I'm sure most people call, the pure MORE Method, where there really is no lecturing. I always joke, but I'm dead serious. I've known Dr. Mahavier for a long time, and I think I've seen him give 2 lectures. But so the first year I sat and observed him, and the obstacles I kind of had to face in that first year was, first and foremost, how much was too much. If I'm not lecturing, when I'm talking to students and they ask questions, you never want to give so much that you put a damper on their actual abilities, but you don't want to starve them for information and ultimately kind of keep them down and discouraged. So that was a big issue for me, finding that proper balance. Also transitioning from observing to actually conducting a class. Again, all I had ever done was just straight lecture. So actually trying to get into the groove of conducting a MORE Method style course was pretty difficult for me. So after my first year of just observing, my first solo semester, I was teaching Cal 1, and I had to make a couple of decisions as far as what method to actually use, if I was going to go for a pure MORE Method or a modified MORE Method, which I went for a modified MORE Method, meaning that I divvied the time up between actually lecturing and doing presentation days, which I'll talk more about in just a second. Also between if I was going to use a set of the awesome notes that are out there for such courses or the text, and I ultimately decided to use the text for varying reasons. But the general course layout of my course was, it was 5 days a week. I would lecture 4 days, generally lecture 4 days, and 1 day a week they would present problems at the board. The second semester, I didn't really change too many things. I taught Cal 2, so probably a little bit meaner, a little bit tougher on them than I was the first semester. I would say the only thing that changed was minor things for the presentation days, which again, I'll talk more in depth in just a second. So as far as my grading goes, again, general layout, I had 3 exams, a final exam, and then their presentation grades. So the way the tests went, my source of problems, I tried not to throw any major curveballs or anything like that at them on tests. That was basically what presentation days were for me. So the problems I would generally get from their texts and things like that are very similar to it. I stole Dr. Mahavior's grading system, a 4-point system. Every problem on the test was worth 4 points. 4 points obviously being the highest if they did everything correctly, and then slowly downhill from there. As far as the problem sessions went, the grading of that, the source of the problems would typically be assigned out of their text, and I would do the even ones so that they didn't have the answers to them. And occasionally I would find interesting problems on the internet or from notes and things like that that I'd throw in there. The first semester, I didn't actually have them explain their problem. There's about 50 students both semesters in the course, so it was very hard just one day a week to have enough time to get a considerable amount of problems up and have everybody explain their problem as well. So I was just having them put them up, and everybody else's job that wasn't putting problems up at the time would be to just look at the problems. If they had questions, we would discuss it. If not, erase it. Let's put more problems up and go. So the first semester, the grading schema was, I actually would rank them. I would see what problem they picked to put up, and depending on the difficulty of the problem and how well they actually executed the steps on the board would dictate their overall grade. The second semester, I wanted more out of my students, so it was actually required of them to present their problem. I'd have them all go up, put their problems up, and then one by one, after everybody was finished, go up and actually explain their problem. And as long as they could defend it properly, which tells you a whole lot of things, but as long as they could defend it properly, then they got actual credit for that day. And if they couldn't, well, I'd give them a second chance, and if they still couldn't, sorry. So their final overall grade would just be an average of the 3 tests, their final exam, and their presentation grade. I did try to do a little bonuses and special problems here and there, but okay, so the way the actual problem sessions were run, the very first day of problem sessions, the problems were previously assigned the week before, so they had a whole week to work on them. And so I would just kind of do like a random mental generator and call on random people and see if they had a problem as far as assigning problems go. Getting them prepared to go to the board. I remember what I felt like the very first time I stood in front of a class to teach. I was probably dripping sweat and just a big old mess, and I had a degree. I should have known a little bit more, but I was still very much so out of sorts, so I can only imagine as a student coming up to the board for the first time. So I just tried to build up their confidence, and the whole first week before we ever did problems, I would make not like huge catastrophic mistakes at the board, but ones enough to where I could refer back to and be like, remember when I screwed up big time at the board? It's no big deal, and just kind of set the scene in the class to make everybody feel confident. And I feel like it worked really well. So after the first day, picking who got to actually present problems, I would try and do off of a scaled system. If you had not presented anything yet, I would pick on you first, or not pick on you, but I would call on you first to see what you had and give you first dibs, and then so on and so forth, just starting with the least, working my way up. And again, the quantity versus quality just goes back to what I was saying about the difference between my first and second semester teaching the calculus classes as far as their presentation goes. The first semester, I was just trying to get as many problems up on the board as possible. The second semester, I was still trying to get as many up as possible, but doing it in a much more beneficial way for my students, actually being able to explain it. It seemed to help them a lot more to actually understand not only their own problem, but other students' problems. Flexibility, I tried to be fairly flexible when it came to the presentation days. It seemed like the further we got into the semester, they didn't want me to lecture anymore. It's just like, shut up, sit down, let's do a couple more presentation days. And so typically our presentation days would be Thursday, and a lot of times I would extend it into a Friday as well and just continue presentations if they had them. And they really seemed to enjoy that. All the other days of the week were just typical class days, but I still had a little bit of an issue with giving too much, holding back without actually holding back. Since I was doing a modified Moore method, I didn't want to hand them all the information on a silver platter. So when you're lecturing 4 days a week and only presenting one day, it was really hard not to say too much. So I know that's something I still struggle with. Student involvement, giving up control while staying on track. In a Moore method class, what I found at least, especially on presentation days, you are in control, but you're not in control. You know, you give pretty much free rein to the students and let them kind of guide where the discussions go and things like that. So giving up that control, again, was a big issue. And time management with only one problem session a week. Again, since I was lecturing 4 days out of the week, I would cover a large amount of material, and then on that one problem session day, you're trying to squeeze all those topics in. So that became fairly difficult trying to wrestle with that. But in the end, just a few comments from the evaluations at the end of the semester. One of the questions that were asked, or one of the things that were on there, was the students determining what the most effective part of the course was. And you can see just by looking through them that it was unanimously the problem sessions, and my actual favorite one is the second one, having presentation days where students explain problems, which helped when I did not understand how Ms. Comer explained how to work out a problem, which speaks so, that says a lot to me, because we always try to reach everybody in the class as teachers, and we know we can't. And so it's really nice to know that these presentation days help students that were maybe not getting the information from me the way it should have been conveyed. And a lot of people don't, they are usually nervous about asking things in class and such. So having somebody else go up and present a problem and have them understand it really meant a lot to me, regardless if it was me or not. So I really enjoyed doing the Moore method, and I know some places it's not, you know, it's kind of like, something new, something different, and I really appreciate Lamar University having the apprenticeship program and having been a part of it. So, thank you. Questions?
I've never tried the presentation day idea, and that's intriguing to me. What advantages do you see over having the presentations on, say, Thursday and Friday, as you said, instead of spending like half of each class on presentations and then the other half on the introduction material, whether that's done by Moore method or another way?
Well, as far as the days that I chose, I found it to be more beneficial to lecture the first half of the week and then let them present problems over what we had discussed in class the latter half of the week. Classes, or at least since I taught it 5 days a week, the classes were only 55 minutes long, and so trying to assign problems and have people put them up and then present, if I'm only taking 20 or 25 minutes out of each class, if we're doing half and half, then that to me really cuts out on time as far as actual time dedicated to lecture or to problem sessions. You have so much in between time trying to wrangle everybody in a 55-minute class. I feel like a lot would get lost.
Well, continuing a little bit on a response to Lee here, you did mention that assigning the problems early in the week gave the students more time to work on them, yes, which to me sounds like a real plus.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would always, usually the Friday, I would try and have, at least by Friday, if not sooner, have the problems already up on Blackboard, or at least on the internet, accessible to them, so that they would have pretty much a full week to look at the material. And that was also gave them a preview of what would be going on that week. If they just glance through the problems, they would have a good preview of what was coming up. So
you had mentioned from the first semester to the second semester that you were a little harsher the second semester, mm-hmm, but as a new teacher using this method, do you feel that from going from Calc 1 to Calc 2 that they were just as new to you, or do you feel like you got more confident from the first semester to the second? How do you feel like you progressed through that?
I think was at an advantage because probably about 85% of my Cal 2 class were my Cal 1 students. So I was already so familiar and comfortable with them that that probably was the majority of why I felt so much more at ease, and so did they. And so I didn't feel bad being a little meaner than I was the first semester, but I definitely can say that I felt more confident doing the presentation days and things like that, being able to let go of that control that I so tightly clung to. So,
Since you mentioned the two populations, those who were familiar to you and those who were newbies, how did you keep the opportunities equal for the newbies?
Well, again, like I said, as far as deciding who got to present and things like that, I would do like little silly things and close my eyes and just be like, you know, Sally Joe, you get to present this problem or whatever. So I tried not to have any biased or predetermined feelings about any of my students at all. And I think all the ones that weren't in my class from the first semester, they picked up and came right in and were part of my little family. So I don't think it was too difficult to not make the distinction between my first semester and second semester new students.